Another project. Now this one is really cool. We're going to take a few videos, we're going to put them together, we're going to mask them out, and we're going to put some color overlays on them. And then we're going to be animating in some shapes and some text. And so we get something like this, which it's lovely. It's a bit of an infographic and it looks really cool. Let's get started. For this project, we're going to start a new composition. So I'm going to go to Composition, New Composition. And in fact, I've actually started a whole new project. So we don't have anything up there. The reason I'm mentioning that is because you can have multiple compositions within the one project. So make sure you've got a new project up and we're going to do a new composition in there. Now, size-wise, I want this to be normal HD size. So I'm going to be using my social media landscape HD 1920 by 1080. If you use a different size, be aware that we're going to be using a little bit of maths to divide this up, so your sizes will be slightly different. And I'm going to go down here. This is going to be a background color of white so that I can see what I'm doing. Remember, as I showed you before, it doesn't actually matter in the final result. And over here, the duration, 15 seconds, is more than enough for what we're going to be doing. And I'm going to click OK. Now, what I'd like to do is to show some rulers. I haven't shown you how to do this yet, so I'm going to go to the View menu and Show Rulers. And the reason I put in the rulers is because now I can drag in some guides, and I want to break my page or my screen up into equal parts. And I can do that by just taking the guides and pulling guides onto my screen at appropriate sizes. So I want to halve this page first of all. Now remember that my document, or my video shall I say, is actually 1920 wide. So half of 1920 is 960. I'm going to zoom in a bit. So down here I'm going to zoom up to 100% so I can see the little numbers along the top. They're really hard to see otherwise. If you want to go higher, by all means go higher so that you can see what you're doing. So I want to find 960, and I'm going to take a guide from the ruler. So I click inside the ruler and drag from the ruler, and I'm going to go over there to 1960. So I think that's 1960. Sorry, 960, not 1960. So it's 50, 60 over there. So there's my first one. My second one is going to be 480. If we just zoom out a bit, you can see where that first one is over there. So then my next one's going to be 480 over there. So I'm going to just drag a ruler in and let's pop it over there at about 480. And the last one here is going to be 1440, 1440. So once again, a last little guide in there up to 1440 over there. So 1400, that's 1500, so 1440 must be that one in there. Now if you get them wrong and you've put them in the wrong place, you can just go and click and drag to move them around if you need. Now let's zoom out a bit, and I'm just going to say fit up to 100% so it'll fit in my screen. And you can see those are divided really nicely up into 4 sections. And we're going to have a different video in each of those sections. Now, the other way that I want to divide this is I want to divide it into 3 going this way. So once again, the height is 1080. So if I have one of these at 360, then another one at 720, that will divide it into 3. Let me go and do that now. I'm just going to zoom in a bit to 100%, and I'm going to drag from the top. So from inside the ruler, you click in the ruler, drag down, and that's going to be 360. So there's 350, 360. I think it's there. And another one at 720 over there. If they're not 100% perfect, don't worry too much about it for the moment. This is just that we can get things roughly into the right place. Once again, we'll just go back to 50% on there, and you can see how my guides are now all ready to go. You can always switch those guides off. They won't be rendered. You can go to the view menu and you can actually switch and show grids. You can show guides. You can show all sorts of different bits and pieces. And if I want to hide the guides, I can just switch off show guides in there. But I want to actually show them. You'll notice that there's another option in there as well, which says snap to guides. And this means that now when I start to put in my masks, it'll snap nicely to those masks. Anyway, have a go. Set up a 1920 by 1080 composition. Go to your composition, go to the view menu, show your rulers, and then when you drag in a guide, go click in the ruler and drag out and drop it onto your composition or your video page. Try it out, and then we're going to put in some content on this. I've gone to Adobe Stock. If you want to go to Pixabay, that's absolutely fine. I've gone into videos, free obviously, and I've put in jellyfish underwater, and I've found a number of different jellyfish videos. Now you can choose whatever you like. If you don't like jellyfish, do sharks or turtles or anything you want. The subject matter doesn't matter. But pick something. As I said, I've done jellyfish in there. I've downloaded them, and I'm now going to go and bring them into my composition. So in the composition bin, in the project bin here, shall I say, not the composition bin, the project bin, I'm going to double click, and I'm going to go along and find those documents that I brought in. So I've just gone to downloads, and as you can see, I've just got a few jellyfish like that. And I'm going to select all of those. I'm just holding down the shift key so I can bring them all in at the same time. Click on open and drop them in like that. Now I'm going to then start to bring them in over there, and you'll see that when I do bring them in, they're all different sizes over here. So I'm going to start off and decide which one I want to go where. Don't forget, when you're dragging these things backwards and forwards, I want to get it right at the beginning there. So I'm holding down the shift key so it'll snap to that point. This jellyfish, I'm probably going to have it on the left hand side over there. So it's going to go up to that little guide in there. Let's have a look and see how that looks, that it doesn't swim away too fast. Maybe we'll move it over, or maybe I'll move it over just a little bit like that. Now what I want to do is I want to put a mask on that so it only appears over there. So I'm going to go along to my masks. Remember, your masks are up here, and I'm making sure that I've actually selected this layer first. Otherwise you'll be creating a shape by itself. So I'm going to choose the rectangular tool, go along to the edge, click and drag and mask it, and you can see how nicely it snaps to that guide that I've got in there now. It doesn't matter whether it's bigger and over the edge, that's fine. I'm really interested in that masked area. Once again, let's just check that out. Let's do another one over here. So I'm just going to do a second one, and then you can get on, do yours, and I'll finish mine while you're doing yours. Now, once again, let's have a look at this. Wow, those are really cool. And I'd like to use this sort of section here, so I'm going to move that video over. Now don't forget, if you're still on that rectangular tool, you have to go back to the arrow tool so you can then click and move that around to where you want it to go. So I'm just going to move mine a little bit like that. Remember, I'm looking at this section here, so hey, that's quite cool. I know they look upside down. I don't think they actually are. But what about if I wanted them the other way around? Well, if I go to my properties on this particular layer, under transform, remember we've got a rotation in there. So I could actually just click and drag on that and rotate it round. I'm going to do it 180 degrees in there. And now, technically it's upside down, but I think it looks better that way around in there. It's up to you. You can try and do yours as you want. Lastly, I'm going to go to the mask. I'm going to draw a little mask in from that guide through to the other guide there. Just get those to snap into position. And let's have a look at what we've got over here. So we've got those two running at the same time. Now I'll stop there. I'm going to finish mine and you go and have a go and get all four of them in there. I've got all my videos in, and if I just scrub the timeline over here, you can see they're all playing. Now, before I go any further, I'm going to go to File and do a save, and this will be a save as. I'm just going to call mine Jelly. The whole thing is going to be about conservation, but you can call yours anything you like. And I'm just going to put it somewhere where I can find it. It's an After Effects project, an AEP, and I'm just going to click on Save. So just in case the worst happens and my machine crashes. Now, what I like to do is to put some color overlays on top of these. So I'm going to use the little masking tool again. It's actually the rectangle tool. I don't have anything selected in here. So none of these layers are selected. So when I go along to the little rectangle tool and I click and drag a rectangle, it will make a new shape which goes on top. Now I've got a color in there, which is absolutely fine. I'm going to do a second one. So I'll start over here, draw in a second shape up to there. You can see how nicely it snaps, and I'll change the color of that to something else. Let's go with a yellow in there. Now you could probably see that I've actually haven't made any new layers here. There are 1, 2, and there's going to be a third rectangle all within the shape in the same layer. So I'll do a third one there, and let's make that more of a sort of a reddish or orangey color, like so. Now I want to go and I want to blend these colors together. So I'm going to go to from normal mode over there to color mode. Now remember, if you can't see these, just right click. I'll just hide that. Just right click up here, go to columns, and we want the modes in there. I've got 3 shapes in this one shape, and I'm going to go from normal all the way down to color, just color by itself, and that puts the color overlay on there. Now I'm done with those guides, so I'm going to go to the view menu for the moment. I'm not going to get rid of them, and I'm just going to hide them over there. Back to the arrow tool, just deselect everything, and let's have a look. And you've got the colors going on with all those different squares. Have a bit of a go with that. If you want to use different colors, that's absolutely fine. I'm not so happy with this red down here, so I might change that shortly. Try it out. As I said, I don't like the color that I've got here, so how can I change it? Well, if I use my arrow at the top, I can go down. Remember, I've got these 3 rectangles in the one shape layer. And you'll see if I click on them here, it just selects them. So I can select rectangle 3, which happens to be the bottom one. It's the top one there. I know it seems a bit strange. And I can then go to my fill color and pick a color. Now I'd like to use the same color that I've got up the top there. So I could either change it in here and try and find that color, or there's a little eyedropper. If I click on the eyedropper, I can move my cursor over that until I find that blue color. Click on that and OK it, and those two are now matching. I'm going to close this down, so we're back to our standard layers over there. And because we've finished with that mode for the moment, I'm going to right click and say hide this, just to make this whole thing a little bit more, well, cleaner, easier to navigate really. So the next thing I want to do is I want to start to bring in the little lozenge shapes that are going to appear from the side and have text on them. And I'm going to make my first one here. So first of all, I make sure that I click off of those shapes, and then I can go along to my shapes at the top. If you just click and hold on the shapes, you'll find there's a rounded rectangle there. I'm going to draw in a rectangle. So this rectangle is going to kind of start here, and I'm going to draw it in. I'm just going off the edge over there, so it's not too much of a problem. Drawing it up to there. Now I want it to be rounded on the corners, and you'll see on the right hand side we've got different properties. If I go down here, there's my shape properties. And remember, if you can't see any of these things, go to the window menu in there, and one of the options is properties, and that's this one over here. And with the properties, I can then go along to the roundness, and I can change the roundness of that shape. So I've got the shape over there. If you want to change the color, that's absolutely up to you. You can go up there, pick any color that you like in there. I'm going to use the same blue that I had, but I might go a little bit darker on there. Just adjust it until you feel happy with what you've got. Now that's the first one, and we're going to have 3 versions of this. So the fastest way for me to do that is to take this layer. So I've clicked on this layer. I'm going to go to edit and copy, or if you know your shortcuts, you can do it that way, and edit and paste. And you can see it pastes in another layer in there. Now using my arrow tool, I can just drag that one down over there. In fact, that one's going to end up like that in the middle. Once again, change the color if you want. I might go with more of a sort of a greeny yellow for that. And same again. Click on there, copy it, paste it in, and use your arrow tool to just move it down. I'm going to move that one across to there. And once again, change the color. I'm actually going to use the eyedropper tool to eyedropper the top color up there as well. Do whatever you want with any of these shapes, but bring in about 3 shapes. We're actually going to animate them in so they actually end up over there. Have a go. I'm going to be animating these 3 bars. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to lock all the layers that I'm not animating, just that I don't touch them by mistake. So moving down here, there's a little padlock there. I'm going to click on these, the little padlock there, 1, 2. Now I get to these 2, you'll see there's a little sound icon. There is sound with those videos. We're not going to be using sound at the moment, so I'm just going to untick the sound icon and lock those 2 layers. And then this one here, this layer, this shape layer, is actually the one that's got all the colors that are overlaying. So it's really these ones that I want to animate. Now let's start off with this one over here. I want it to end up here. And a useful trick when you're animating something is to start off where you want it to finish. So I want it to end here, and I want it to have come in over a certain amount of time. So I'm going to say when this gets to about 3 seconds, remember we can change this later if we need. When this gets to about 3 seconds, I want that to be right over there. So if I go along to this layer, and remember I want to move its position, oh, wrong layer, let's try that again, to this layer here, I'm going to press P for position. I'm going to click on the little stopwatch to keyframe it there, and I'm going to move my playback head back to here. And I'm going to say over here I want it to start, and the position, the playback head is there. So if I go to my position and I move it up, down, left or right, you can see if I go to the right one, it moves it up and down. If I go to the left of these 2, it'll move it left or right. And I actually want to move it across to here. So it's just out of the screen in there. So what will happen is it will sit there and then it'll animate in like that. We're also going to select those two keyframes and we're just going to go to animation, down to our keyframe assistant, and we're going to say easy ease. So when this comes in, let's play it so we can see the timing. It just pops in like that and slows down into the right position. Now if you wanted faster, you can move these things closer together. So if let me just make sure I select just one of them, pull them closer together like that, and you'll see it'll come in a lot quicker. That actually looks a little bit better. I'm going to go with something between those two, like that. Okay, I'm going to do the second one now, so I'm going to lock this one so I can't touch it by mistake. Over there, let's just close down the properties. Go to the next one, which is this one here. Open them up. Now, once this one has come in, over to there, I want the next one to animate in and stop at about there. Once again, remember, you can always change the timing later on. We're just getting it roughly right. So, in my transform options, or I can click the P on the keyboard, I'm going to go to my position. I'm going to keyframe the position there. I'm going to move back a little bit, and so that as that one's just finishing, I'm going to then move this so it moves out like so. Let's have a look at those two. Press the play button. The first one comes in, the second one comes in. The second one's coming in a very robotic form, so I'm going to select both of those, go up to my animation, keyframe assistant, easy ease. I'll do the last one very quickly here. So that comes in, and then that one's going to come in and stop here. I'll close this down. Let's go to my last layer over there, press P, keyframe it where I want it to finish, move back to where I want it to start its journey, which is over here. And once again, I will then keyframe that, moving it backwards. Select both of those, and we'll go to Animation, Keyframe Assistant, Easy Ease. So let's have a look at that, how that works. So the first one will come in, second one comes in, third one comes in. If you want to see the keyframes all at the same time, you can hold down the Shift key and select multiple layers. Oops, let's make sure that I seem to have locked one. Select multiple layers like that, and then if I press P, it will show them all at the same time like that. So I can see, oh yeah, that's coming in there, that's coming in, or maybe that one's coming in a bit too fast. I might need to move it over. I might need to speed this one up a little bit as well. And you can then just have a play with these and see how they work. Maybe this first one needs to come in a bit slower. Maybe you want some overlap on them like that. It's up to you. Change those keyframes around until you get what you want from the look of those. Try them out. Now, what else can I do with multiple layers? Well, I want to change the color of these bars because they seem to be disappearing into the background, and I can do them all at the same time. So I'll select one, hold down the Shift key and select the other two, and then I can go to the top here. You see where it says fill, there's a question mark because, well, there's two different colors. If I click on that, I can then change the color of all of them at the same time. So I'm just going to go with a slight, not quite pure white, but an almost pure white in there. Now, what else could we do with these? Well, to bring them forward a little bit, I want to put a bit of a drop shadow on them. So, although we can do these things to multiple items, I'm going to do them one at a time. I'm going to select this first one over here, which is this one. I'm going to go to Effects, and there are so many different effects in here. Now if you come from Photoshop, you will have a look at a lot of this and you go, well, that's not an effect, the color correction is not an effect. But in After Effects, all of these things come in as effects. I'm going to go down to perspective, and I'm going to go across to drop shadow down there. Now what happens is, if I pull this up a little bit so you can see it a bit better, this is the layer that I'm on. You can see it's put on an effect option. Let's close those ones down and just have a look at that again. So if I open this up, you'll see not only do I have transformations now, but I also have an effect. And if I click inside there, there is my drop shadow. If I click on that, I've got some options that I can change in here. Now these options are very similar to the ones that appear in this little area. So this is not the project window anymore, by the way. There's the project window. This is the effect controls. So you'll see that I've got things like the distance, and I can change the distance here, or I can change the distance there. I've got a softness or a softness. Let's go to the distance first of all, and if I move that along, you can see where that drop shadow is. I can change the angle with this little wheel over here, or I could use the angle over here, the direction, to change that. And I'm going to go to the softness, and I can adjust the softness in here, or I can adjust the softness there. Likewise, the opacity or the opacity. I'm just going to take my opacity down a little bit. I don't want that shadow to be too overwhelming, just a tiny bit to separate it from the others. Let me do that again. So I'll go to this one over here. I'm on that one. I'm going to go to Effect, down to Perspective and Drop Shadow. And once again, I can open that up and change the settings in there, or I can just go and do it over here. So I'm just going to change the distance a little bit, the angle a bit, the softness a bit, and take the opacity down a smidge. Remember, when you're doing this, I'm doing each one of them individually. You can apply things to multiples, but we'll get onto that later. So last one, Effect, Perspective, Drop Shadow, and just very quickly I'll adjust the distance. Can't see it there. Let's pull that down a little bit and just go and say fit up to 200%. So a bit of a shadow there, bit of softness on it, change the angle, distance a bit too much, and change the opacity so it's a lot softer in there. Let's have a look. So they'll come in now with the little shadows underneath. Try that out, putting in your first effect. What's going to happen if you need to move things around because they're not right? So let's say, for example, that as these come in, I think, oh my goodness, you know what? Maybe I should have got that one to go across to there, and this one to the middle of that, and that one out there, because I haven't got enough room for my text. Well, it's fairly easy to do that. Let's start off with this one up here. What I need to do is to press P so I can see my keyframes, and I need to make sure that I go to my keyframes that I want to work on. So it's going to be this end keyframe here that's going to have to move across. So I'm going to press the keyboard shortcut to get exactly onto that keyframe there. And the keyboard shortcut is J and K. J will jump you backwards and K jumps you forwards. Easy shortcut to remember, because if you think of jump keyframe, J, K. So that's a nice way of doing it. Otherwise, you can use the little arrows here to jump to the keyframe. Don't just move the playback head onto the right position, because sometimes when you do that, you think it looks right, but it's not, and actually you end up making another keyframe almost on top of the last one. So do use either the shortcuts or the little buttons there to get to the right place. Now that I'm on that keyframe, I can start to move this across. I'm going to hold down the Shift key as I'm moving it to make sure that I'm just moving very quickly to where I want it to go. So I want it to be, I think, just over there. Let me do the next one. So I'm going to lock this one down so I can't touch it. Go on to my next one. Once again, I'm going to press P to go in. I'm going to use the little arrows or J and K, and then I can either click and drag to move this across, or I can go to my position over here and I can move it into the right position over there. I think that's a little bit better. And my last one, so I'll lock that one down, close it down. My last one over here, I'm going to go in, same again, press P, use K to jump to the last keyframe over there, and position wise, just move it in a little bit, like so. I think that's better. I've got a bit more space for those. Now I'll close that down as well, and also just lock it so I can't change it now. Have a bit of a go and maybe move something around. Doesn't have to be those, but have a try with moving something using your J and K to jump to that keyframe and then change the properties. Let's bring in some text. So it's going to be very similar to how we did the little bars, although we're not going to animate the text in. If you want to do that, you are more than welcome to, though. I'm just going to fade mine up. So let me start off with the first bit of text. I'll use the text tool. I'm going to go over here. I'm going to click once and put in my text. So this is going to say conservation. And I'm going to select the bit of text, and then on the right hand side here, I can then go and choose the typeface I want to use. And I'm just going to go with something boldish, but not too delicate. Let's have a little look at what we can do here. I think something simple, maybe in the Arial or Helvetica line. So I'm going to go with a very simple Helvetica black. And I'm going to change the size over here by dragging that up. And I can then move it around by going into the options, the property options in here, into transform, and I'll just change the position, get it into the right place over there. Now, what about the color of the text? Well, I'm going to select that and then go and change the color. Here's the color in with the text options, and I'm just going to pick a color. Let's have a look and see if one of those blues will work quite well for that. I think that works really well. Now that I've done that one, I'm going to copy not the text but the layer and paste it in it twice. So if we go to our move tool, we can have one down here and we can have another one. Oops, didn't mean to do that. Another one over there. This one, if I select it, is going to say C, and this one over here is going to say under the. And I'll just use my arrow tool to move them into the right position. Now, for a slightly more cinematic look to my text, in the text options, I'm going to go down here. This is tracking. And if I drag the tracking over, you'll see it will move those characters further apart. Let's just do something like that. So I'm going to go with 150 on that one. Let's select the next one. And once again, I'll put in 150-ish on that. And the last one over here, click a few times to select it. I'm still on the text tool, by the way. And over here, let's make that 150 in there. Might be a bit too much, but we can always change it later on. And then I'll go back to my arrow tool up the top. Now, I want these to fade in. So this is going to come in when that appears, when this top bar appears here. I want this to be fading in. So let me move my playback head up to there. That's when it's going to end. I want the text to start at about there. I'm just pulling it out so you won't actually see the text up until that point. And then for the next one, when the second bar gets to its right position, I'm going to move that bit of that bar up to there. These are not quite in the right order. You've got under the C, conservation. And then the last one, when that bar gets to where it should go, I'm going to move it up to there. So now all that will happen is they'll come in like so. But we wanted to be a little bit more gentle, so we're going to animate them. I'll start with conservation. I'm going to press the, now remember, for opacity, it's not O, it's T for transparency. And I'm going to say I want this to be at 100% just in there. So I'll click on the little stopwatch. Then I'm going to move back to the beginning. And over there, that's where I want it to be 0. So that will just fade in quite quickly, rather than just a straight jump in. If you want to move them further apart because you want a bit more of a fade, that's absolutely fine. Just pull them apart like that. I'm going to go to this under the. Once again, press P, no, not P, press T on that for opacity. Move in a little bit where I want it to be 100%. Keyframe it. Move back to the beginning and create another keyframe by taking the opacity down to 0. Let's do this last one over here. Click on the C, click T, click your stopwatch to put in a keyframe, go back again to the beginning and take that down to 0. Let's see how that animates now. We go quite nice and gentle. If you need to move them around, speed them up, just move them closer together or further apart. Try it out. I want to go back to the project bin. You can see the effect controllers are there. So if I click the word project, I'm back to my bin here. And I'm going to bring in a little logo to put in there. Now, I've added this logo into the assets for this course. If you want to find any logo with a transparent background, that's entirely up to you. But if you want to use the turtle that I've put in, it's part of the assets in the course. I'm going to go along and find it. So I've left mine in a folder here. It's called Turtle Logo Gordon Johnson Pixabay, because I got it from Pixabay, but I made the background white. I'm just going to drag it in. Now you can see it really is very, very big. So I'm going to press the, remember to scale something, you press S. And I'm just going to scale the whole thing down. I'm not putting any keyframes in there at all. I just want to scale it around and place it over here into the right sort of position where I want it to end up. Now, I think what I'd like to do is after about 6 seconds, once they've read the conservation under the C a little bit, I want my logo to appear. And I'm going to go and keyframe it over there. But of course, I'm going to drag the beginning bit so it doesn't appear until then. Just before that, move back a bit, go to my scaling and see if I can scale this up to make it really big. So what's going to happen is it's very quickly just going to come in like that into the one position. But of course, I'd like to at the same time change the opacity. So I'm going to press T. I'm going to make sure that the opacity is going to be correct when it's here. And I'm going to keyframe that. And then I'm going to move back a little bit. And I'm going to take the opacity down to 0. Let's have a look and see how that actually works. So they get used to looking at the video. The text comes in and then whoosh, my logo comes in after that. Have a bit of a go. Use this logo or any other logo that you like. Make sure it's on a transparent background and have a play with opacity and scaling. I'm going to close down these by clicking on the little arrows. And if you wish, you can lock them as well. Now, once people have seen that, they've read it, I'd like to then fade the whole thing out very quickly. And I want to fade to white. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to the layer at the top, the layer menu, new, and I'm going to put a solid in. And we can call it anything we like. I'm going to call it white solid. It's going to be white in there. Just pick your color that you want and click OK. Now that's over the whole thing. So what I want to do is right up to this 8-second mark, I want everything to be visible. So I'm just going to press on T and take the opacity right down. And I'm going to keyframe that as well. Oops, let's make sure it is on 0. Then I'll move over here and I'm going to increase the opacity back up to 100%. So what will happen is it will just fade that white solid in, which gives the impression of everything fading out. Now that's faded out, I'm going to go along to this little work area. It's called the time ruler. And I'm going to drag it. You can see it says work area when I went over it. Drag it to the end. That's where I wanted to finish. So let's have a look at that. Move along, fades out, and it stops, and it'll start again. If you want to fade in from the beginning as well, you could do that using the same white solid. So I can say over here I want it to be 0, and I'll put in a keyframe by clicking on that little button there, or just resetting 0. And I'm going to say over to, no, let's move that in a little bit. And right at the beginning, I want to be 100%. I nearly got that the wrong way around. So the first one is 100%, the second keyframe is 0. So it'll start out at 100% and then go down to 0, fades everything in, all our animation happens, and then we fade out at the end. I'm going to fade this in a lot faster by moving those keyframes closer together. So we get a very quick fade in, the whole thing happens, and then we fade out at the end. Don't forget, as you're going along, keep saving your project. Have a go and put in a white solid. If you want to use black or any other color, it's absolutely entirely up to you. And then use the opacity to animate it in and or out. Now let's render this out. I'm going to go to File, and I'm going to go down to Export, and I'm going to say Add to Adobe Media Encoder Queue. And then it should add it to Media Encoder. And if we go over to Media Encoder, it usually pops up by itself. We want to make sure that we're rendering it out to the right preset. So don't forget, on the left hand side we've got the presets. I'm going to go down to the social media presets in here, and I can pick one of these presets, whatever works for me. Now I'm going to be using the YouTube one over there. So I'm using YouTube 1080p Full HD, and I'll drag and drop it on top of that. To be honest, it was there already. The output file, I'm going to click on this output file here and give it a name. So I'll call this Jelly Conserve. Oops. And I'm going to put it onto my desktop so we can have a look at it in a mo. Click on Save, and then click the green button, and it will get on and render it. You can see it's rendering here, and it should just render the area which had the top bar that I dragged over to the left. That's done. Let's have a look at it now. So here it is. If I double click on there, play that, all those come in, the logo comes in, and then we fade out to white.